Wowza. 2025 was difficult. And while I've been absent on this YouTube channel, that doesn't mean I haven't been in the trenches struggling. But, we press on.
Rip and tear until it is done.
I'm not about to sugarcoat it. Last year was incredibly tough. Probably the hardest year we've had in business, life, everything. It was just like a crescendo of everything coming together and just kicking us when we were down. But hopefully I think we're through that. So there was like a few different reasons this happened. First of all, I have a job outside of fitness, or I had a job outside of fitness that was like our safety net financially. And as with, I'm sure a few people have experienced, AI essentially took away my role. And it happened very suddenly. It didn't even give me time to prepare to lose my role as a copywriter. So just like that, boom, my income was like halved. It wasn't the end of the world because I have been overworked for a while in regards to juggling strength block and then my role in digital marketing and content strategy and all that kind of stuff. It was just the out happened a little bit too fast. But then on top of this, Sophie also almost became unemployed because she does makeup outside of the gym. So we were suddenly staring down the barrel of a financial crisis. To top all of that off, the New Zealand economy took an absolute nosedive. We are currently experiencing like the highest amount of business liquidations and closures in I think it's like 15 or 30 years, whatever it is, it's a lot. And I can definitely feel it. And I feel for the people who have lost their businesses and are just trying to get by.
Get New Zealand back on track.
And the metric for measuring the success of a year has kind of gone out of the window because it's gotten to the point where it's like if you've survived, you've done well. So I'll give myself a little pat on the back for that because we have survived, but it hasn't been easy at all. One of the good things is I am an eternal optimist and my ADHD kind of makes me built for chaos. I am like a cockroach. I am hard to kill. I am at my best when pressure is mounting and I'm backed into a corner. And it's been happening for so long that I've learned to be able to say, even if I don't know the way out of this, I will survive it because I've survived this a million times before. But this does come at a cost. Staying stuck in fight or flight, no matter how stimulating it is to the ADHD brain, does lead to burnout. But just while we were fighting for our lives to get through 2025, something wonderful happened, but also added a hell of a lot of pressure. And if you follow me on our socials, you know that my wonderful Sophie is pregnant with not one, but 2 children. So now the pressure is on. And I think something interesting happens to the vast majority of to-be dads and dads when they find out their significant other is pregnant. You kind of go into like feral money-making mode. It's the only thing I could really think about, right? Was like, Sophie's pregnant, have to provide for my 2 kids. How am I going to get as much money in? I think it's because like pregnancy is something that we can only be a supportive role in. And you would feel pretty useless if you just watched your wife go through this incredible physical transformation whilst you just sit around and do nothing. I think we're kind of wired to play our part in trying to be like, all right, well, I can't grow the baby, but I can try grow the environment that the babies are going to enter into. And for most people, that is financial stability. However, with ADHD, one of the problems is you get hyper-focused on it. And I have the added quirk of no matter where I am in life, I always feel like I'm falling behind. I'm always trying to play catch up. That's something that's quite common with people who have ADHD, who are neurodiverse, because we've been trying to fit in our whole lives and, doesn't quite add up. So I went into full planning mode, like we need to buffer out all of our revenue sources because we diversify income, make sure we've got money coming in from all places, or plans on how to grow each of these revenue things, from the app to members of our gym to PT clients and everything in between that we offer. Needless to say, I had completely gone tunnel vision on all of this, and I was working at a rate that was very productive, got a lot done, but it always is going to come at a cost. Naturally, as we exited 2025 and the business slowed down, as it always does because people go on holiday and stuff, Sophie suggested that I actually take some time off work, and I took a week off. And it instantly became apparent to me that I was incredibly stressed. I have the ability to ignore that. I was incredibly stressed, incredibly wired. My emotions had been dulled down to almost nothing. And all I wanted to do was keep on working, even though I was becoming increasingly numb to the world. While the forced relaxation finally gave me an opportunity to reflect on how I was feeling inside and realizing more and more that this wasn't sustainable, it kind of also, the icing on the cake was one of my gym members reached out to me and was just like, "What have you been doing in your break?" And I said, "Just been sitting around doing nothing, being lazy." And he said something quite profound that actually struck me, and it was, "Only someone who works too much thinks that resting is being lazy." And that was just kind of like the final nail in the coffin. You see, this isn't the first time I've found myself on the track to burnout, but it certainly is going to be the first time that I stop it in its tracks before it gets bad. Because I know that I can keep pushing it and I can keep going, but ultimately when you hit that breaking point, which everyone does at some point, it's very difficult to come back from it. It takes a while to regain your ability to function, be motivated, anything in between. It's like a super hard reset of the brain. While I don't mind getting into these hyperfixated states where I become an absolute psycho that can just focus on work and push. As I said before, it numbs my personality, it numbs my sense of humor, my ability to have fun. And Sophie's been around for a while, so she can deal with me when I'm in that state, right? She will eventually try to pull me out of it, but she understands when I'm like that. But with having children on the way, the last thing I ever want to be is an emotionally unavailable father. It's super important to me to not just be looked at as a breadwinner. I want to be there. I want to enjoy moments. And going down this path is either going to lead to me burning out and not being able to enjoy welcoming my children into this world. It will kind of make me just be a passenger in my own life. So I need to prioritize for once in my life, making sure that I'm working enough, because I still do need to make money, whilst not neglecting the fact that I have to be emotionally available for the most ever in my life. It has to be a priority. I can't just lean on Sophie to carry me through it or whatever's required. I have to be my best self. I have to have both elements of me working at the same time. The paradox of ADHD is that we seek stimulus, but it's that very stimulus that ends up burning us out. The safeguard for not getting overstimulated, when you're not medicated at least, is that when something stops stimulating your brain, you move on to the next thing. It's kind of why we don't finish anything, but it's also what stops us getting overloaded, and we just end up with lots and lots of unfinished tasks as we move from stimulus to stimulus rather than staying locked on something and pushing past the point of stimulus to completion. Make sense? However, no matter how energetic we may appear to be, we have finite energy, and every one of these task switches burns through energy. Every time we take a new stimulus, it's revving the brain back up, and just increasing this revving of the brain back up is what eventually burns us out. So as I said, being medicated for ADHD allows me to finish tasks, right? I still seek stimulus, but it allows me to push past that uncomfortable, I want to stop doing this, and keep going. However, don't get me wrong, this doesn't give me more energy. It just means I can now run the brain engine when the dopamine tank is completely empty. And if the brain is completely empty and we keep going, it eventually is going to break down. Which brings me to the first point on how I'm going to avoid burning out. Being conscious of the stimuli I allow into my brain. We are all slaves to a screen. It's fair to say this piece of technology was created with good intentions, but has evolved into something far, far more sinister. They are designed to not only engage us, but also to enrage us. And as a consequence, they are literally designed to extract as much time from us as they can, with giving very little in return most of the time. Well, that's not completely true. They actually often give me, at least, a cocktail of anxiety and anger at what's happening in the world around me. While I do feel it's pretty important to be conscious of what's happening in the world around us, I'm also very aware of the fact that we were never designed to be bombarded with this much information all at once, all the time, especially of things that we don't hold direct control over. It's particularly bad for the ADHD brain, which also likes to grab onto stuff that, whether it makes us happy or angry, and ruminates on it and just elicits the same emotions over and over again. We basically get stuck in a spiral. Our phones have become these things that are just serving up a mix of the horrors of the world mixed with absolute AI slop, and most of us are piggies that just want to eat from the trough. And while I'd say that this is a problem for everyone, it is particularly a problem for people with ADHD. Remember that finite energy that I was talking about earlier? Well, Doomscrolling really is a trap for that. It is the ultimate representation of unlimited stimuli that you just flick through, you never have to finish, and it is an endless rabbit hole. But at the same time, it's burning lots of energy. These quick hits of dopamine from short form content really are just a roller coaster that bounces back between entertainment into anger, into pure apathy, and we do become hooked on it. We become enslaved by it. Hey, just ignore the fact that my camera died and I've changed clothes and pretend that my ADHD didn't take 2 weeks to get back to filming this video, but here we are. So let's carry on where we stopped. So with short form content, my brain absorbs it like a sponge. And because of my ADHD, I have an ingrained sense of justice sensitivity and empathy, and this just leaves me in a fluctuating state of fight or flight constantly. From bad world news to comparing myself to others and basically absorbing content that doesn't serve me, this is death by 1,000 cuts. And the problem is, this is through short form content, so it's moving at like 1,000,000 miles an hour. I'm not even absorbing it on like a conscious level. It just moves into my subconscious and nestles there and grows into something grosser and grosser as time goes. So I have to take the consumption of short form content into my own hands. I have to put in blocks and I have to make substitutions. It's not a matter of stopping, it's a matter of replacing. First things first, the main culprits, the social media apps. I have put a limit on how much I can use these per day. A few people have asked me how I've done this. It's actually just a setting in your iPhone, and I'm sure if you're on an Android, it's exactly the same. Go in there, set it for 2 hours a day is what I've got. I've set it to still allow me to go on social media because I do need it to run my business and all that kind of stuff, but I think we're all lying to ourselves, especially business owners, when we say we need to be on it all the time. Everything doesn't have to be instant. You don't have to get back to everyone instantly, and you don't need to be constantly pulled to your phone. So this locks me out after 2 hours usage a day. And since doing this, my screen time in general has dropped by 34% a week, which is crazy because I was getting nothing out of it. That is the first block for the short-term content, which I honestly think, and research is beginning to show, is the worst thing for our brains. Second, I am an avid podcast listener. I am always listening to something, and I used to look at it as a way of self-development and learning and all that good stuff. But unfortunately, because of the state of our world, no matter what niche my podcast in, shitty political stuff that angers me seems to have made its way in there. It's probably really obvious that this already exists in the weird right-wing spin of fitness stuff, but then even like the science podcasts I listen to, I have to hear about the vaccine denials and all the undoing of all of this progress that's happening across the world, and it makes me very, very angry. So while I'll still be listening to podcasts, I'm definitely going to stick to things that are more designed to make me laugh and entertain me, rather than anything that is pretty focused on current affairs. I will listen to a few of them just to, again, keep up with the world, but I'm going to limit my diet on like news-related podcasts. With the news-related podcasts, I'm only going to listen to podcasts that release once a week. I feel like this is a good way of providing updates on current world situations and what's happening, whilst not getting bombarded like every single day with the same messages where nothing has actually changed outright, but it's just a constant reminder of the state of the world and how stressful everything is. You don't need to be hearing your same takes no matter where you sit politically over and over again, because it's just going to keep you in a constant state of feral anger. And I have to remind myself that podcasts haven't always existed, and there are other ways to fill the silence. I'm not looking to sit with my thoughts anytime soon. So it seems completely stupid, but I'm going back to just listening to music. You can use music to evoke whatever emotion you want. I've always loved a range of music, but at some point my brain decided that it was more important to be taking in information than essentially vibes. And I've come to realize that this is probably not the right way of looking at the use of music. Music can be motivating. It can also be a disruptor if you're stuck in like a crappy tangle of thoughts. You know, you can bring in a new emotion, switch the way you're thinking just by this external stimuli that you are in complete control of. And it's timeless, so it's not tied into the moment. It is, for me at least, music is like single servings of emotions. You know, I can just pop it in and change my complete outlook that I'm currently going in. And sometimes we need to disrupt these thought patterns, especially if you have ADHD and you're stuck in like a ruminating pattern of thoughts. We can choose the soundtrack for our life, and I think that that's a beautiful thing. So we've reduced the short form content, and we'll hopefully be working our way up to just having entire days of social media. That's the ultimate goal, but baby steps. We've reduced the stimuli of taking in negative information through the forms of podcasts, and we've replaced it with music. But the ADHD brain isn't going to let me just sit and not think. We have to replace it. This is an addiction, and the reason why people fail to beat addictions is because they just try to go cold turkey. You've got to replace it even more. So I don't think I'm about to be all zen and quiet for a moment. Instead, I still need stimuli, but I'm going to replace it with stimuli that actually makes me feel accomplished. And this is going to be different from person to person. For me personally, I'm going to make sure that I'm creating, such as this video, but even stuff just for myself. I think about the fact that I've always had ADHD and what did I do before I started getting bombarded with information. And as a child, I just spent every waking minute of my life drawing in a sketchbook. And it sounds so stupid, but if I draw something, if I illustrate something, even if it's not great, it gives me a sense of accomplishment, and there is very seldom anything else. It is also one of the few things that I can autonomously just allow myself to do for extended amounts of time in a completely calm manner that then leaves me happy afterwards rather than drained. So we're going back to pen and pencil. We're trying to get back into illustration, and not just for business and marketing stuff like I have done, just for the love of the game. We're trying to bring positive stimuli to replace the negative stimuli we're trying to avoid. I can't sit still. I have to be doing something. And that's one of my options, and it'll be different for everyone. I, like many neurospicy individuals, am a coffee addict. I literally don't function without this stuff. I know that sounds cheesy to say, but it's true. The first thing that I think of when I open my eyes in a dopamine deprived morning is I need a cup of coffee, and my personality, brain, and general function just doesn't work until I've had some caffeine. But I need to be honest with myself. In order to avoid burnout, I'm looking to down-regulate my nervous system, not upregulate it all the time. If I can be open right now, I am drinking way too much coffee. I'm a little bit too comfortable being overly wired and stimulated. Hear me out. This is what my day looks like. I wake up in the morning, I have a double or triple shot espresso coffee almost instantly. I then take 20 milligrams of methylphenidate. I then head to the gym and will often go out just a couple hours later for another triple shot cappuccino. Then a few hours later, I'll take another 20 milligrams of methylphenidate. That is a lot of things revving my brain up. Sometimes this can all happen before 1 p.m. It's too much. And before you jump in the comments and say that I'm some kind of speed addict because of my medication, prior to being medicated, I was drinking 9 to 12 cups of coffee a day just to function, because that is sometimes what it takes for me to feel normal and not depressed. Hell, I was even mixing pre-workout into energy drinks before I trained. A common occurrence. I can't even imagine doing that. So whilst the medication has actually allowed me to bring my caffeine consumption down a little bit, I still think that I'm overly reliant on it and reliant on myself having a bit of like that glitchy nervous energy. Even though it doesn't make me feel anxious like normal people, I still think that it is a crutch I'm using to keep on going. Thor wanted to say hi for a bit. Yeah, so it's a crutch that I use that I don't necessarily need anymore. Say goodbye. So the main reason why I require as much caffeine as I do is because it is so difficult to get myself started in the morning. And to be fair, that first cup of coffee is like a ritual that is the first like positive thing that happens in my life. So I'm not looking to get rid of it. We're just going to reduce the 3 shots down to 1. So I still get to have my cup of coffee and start my day on a easy win, easy positive note. However, instead of then just relying on more and more caffeine to try rev my slow morning brain up, I'm going to grab one of the frozen burritos that I have meal prepped before for breakfast and pop it in the microwave for 5 minutes. Now that 5 minutes is important because this is a window of time that is very small, and I would normally just sit on the couch and mope and wait for that to happen. But we're going to use it to our advantage by replacing caffeine with the natural stimuli of exercise. I've got no other option but to wait for that microwave to go for 5 minutes. So we're starting our morning with a 5-minute bunch of bodyweight exercise. I know you hear it all the time, like, oh, exercise is a way to treat ADHD symptoms. But one of the problems I've always had with exercising in the morning, other than me feeling like absolute trash in the morning, is the fact that because I'm like advanced with my training, anything I can get myself to do, I always like over plan, make it too hard. It has some kind of like overarching purpose that I'm trying to achieve. And it's actually just too much pressure for me to do anything sustainable. So instead we're going just a 5-minute EMOM. And in that every time that timer goes off, we're doing 10 bodyweight squats, 10 press-ups, and holding a plank for the remainder of the minute. The purpose of this exercise isn't to achieve anything other than getting myself to wake up. And I have to make myself okay with that. The reason it's only 5 minutes is because that is almost impossible for me to talk myself out of, especially considering I've got 5 minutes that I have to kill whilst waiting for my breakfast. Once this little bodyweight EMOM thing is done, it is impossible to still feel tired. And then I can follow it up with a good amount of like electrolytes and hydration and creatine and everything that's good for my brain. And I have now condensed my entire long caffeinated ritual to get my brain working into just like 5 minutes worth of exercise that is completely accessible, completely achievable. I can do it in the lounge. I don't have to go anywhere. Every piece of friction that stops me from working out in the morning is gone. It is literally just a tool to wake myself up. Those 5 minutes of exercise wake me up way more than any amount of coffee ever could. But you see that I didn't just reduce the caffeine, I replaced it with something that was completely accessible and easy to do, which perfectly segues into the next part of what needs to change in my life. And that is my training. You'll hear from like a million places that exercise is the best way of treating ADHD, and I completely agree with this. In fact, that's how I ended up in the situation I'm in. I was undiagnosed for so long, but I'd figured out that exercise makes me feel good, made me passionate about it, made me want to teach other people about it, and now I'm a strength coach and own a gym, right? So I'm well aware that my ADHD is helped by me exercising. However, when you start heading into burnout, one of the nefarious things that does happen is the things you used to enjoy become heavy. They become difficult.
Then one day, duck stops. Can't flap, can't think, can't care. Everything feels heavy, even the fun things.
And that is training for myself as well. I know I need it, but it can feel like a chore, and then sometimes even I don't want to do it, which is stupid because no matter what, like I'm in this for life. I love lifting weights. I love everything about it. So to see myself wanting to not do it is quite confronting. I think part of the reason why is because I've been training so long, I'm pretty harsh on myself in regards to what training looks like. I've competed in powerlifting, competed in strongman, and everything I do has always been to make myself bigger, faster, stronger kind of thing, right? Like I'm all about performance. And because of that, I treat my training like I'm an athlete, even when I don't have the capacity to be an athlete. And rather than throwing the baby out with the bathwater, it's about finding an in-between. I'm always going to preach how important having a program with a progression model and long-term goals is, but it is also important that you want to actually train, because consistency beats absolutely everything, right? Being compliant. But if you're heading towards burnout and you stop training, and then you force yourself into training, what was once a positive thing is now just adding stress to your life. And if you have dug yourself a hole, the worst thing you could do is keep digging, right? So I'm allowing myself I'm still going to be training, but I'm going to allow it to be a bit more intuitive for a while. I'm after no real outcomes. I am going to engage in novelty. The gym to me for the next little chapter of my life might literally just be my playground. What I am drawn to train, and day by day that might change, is what I'm going to go after. I'm going to use the ADHD seeking for novelty as a way to get myself into the gym without the pressure of why am I doing this? So for me, it is probably going to be like lifting heavy. Maybe once in a while, I want to do like a grueling conditioning session. Who knows? But I'm giving myself permission to train what I would normally say is in an unoptimized way. Because right now, the training just needs to be fun. And I've been doing this for long enough that I'm well aware that it's probably not going to progress anywhere. And maybe that will kickstart things to make me want to progress again. But right now, I know that I can't train how I used to because my nervous system and my brain just aren't having it, right? They're trying to keep me out of the gym. So I have to allow myself to essentially enjoy the gym in however that takes shape. And who knows how long that will be for. The other thing is, like, if I had the perfect life, I would keep training like an absolute psycho, right? Like, I would love to be able to train 5 days a week for 3 hours. But when you've got so many layers of stress happening, adding another layer of stress through training, it is contradictory to what you should be doing. Like I said, I train like an athlete, but I'm not an athlete. I train like my life can revolve around training, but it actually can't. Maybe I do only train 3 times a week for half an hour. It's more having the mental shift of allowing myself to be okay with that and learning to enjoy the training and not being hard on myself when it isn't perfect. I am not hitting PBs, all this kind of stuff. And that also, swallowing a little bit of the ego, going backwards in strength levels, I just have to accept it. New chapter, new priorities. The training's always going to be there, but the training can't always be the priority, especially not right now as I am trying to not let myself burn out, and then children are going to come along and recovery is going to go to absolute crap and stuff. So it's just accepting it now and just using the gym as something I enjoy rather than something that is like a job for me to get better at. The final thing I just wanted to touch on, but I didn't feel like going too deep into it, is nutrition, right? So with that finite energy thing that I keep going back to, I find for me personally, it takes like the same amount of energy for me to cook 10 meals in one go than it does to cook individual meals. So I'm really going to be relying on meal prepping large amounts of food in one go. I know it's a little bit boring and my brain doesn't like it either, but the trade-off of having to not decide what to eat every single day is liberating. And if I treat, like, I can still make it delicious food, but if I treat it like a fuel for 90% of my eating, the amount of stress off my shoulders is really worth it. And it's something I recommend to other people with ADHD. They're like, isn't it boring to eat the same thing every day? Yes, it is. But for me, the trade-off of not having to think about eating, then finding the energy to cook what to eat is well outweighed by, okay, I'm eating Mexican mince and rice for the 5th time this week. So that's what I'm going to be doing. Lots of meal prep. This is going to come especially in handy for when the twins do arrive and we've got even less energy for that kind of stuff. And that's just kind of where I want to leave this video. Look, I know I front loaded it with a lot of like my thoughts on mass consumption of media and the overstimulating world we live in, and on quite a negative note. But originally I was just going to make this like a tips video, but there's so many of those out there, and sometimes I think the information surrounding the tips are more important than the tips themselves, especially if this message resonates with you, like it makes you feel seen. It is a stressful world out there for everyone at the moment, and I think particularly neurodiverse people often feel it the worst because we're trying to fit in the confines of a world that we don't really fit in anyway, and then on top of it, the world is in unprecedented times, so we don't even know how to like mask our ways through it. It's like it can be pretty difficult. Just know that what you are feeling is completely normal. We are not meant to exist with this much stimuli going around. We are being bombarded, manipulated, in fact, from every single angle, and there is nothing wrong with just choosing to figure out ways of turning it off. You'll see that the main message that I am trying to put in this video is that you're not going to willpower your way out of anything. If you could have done that, you would have done it by now. You have to like isolate what is causing the problems. Then you have to replace them with something that is equal but serves you better. So it's not a matter of just ignoring everything and hoping that you can brain power your way out of it. If you could do that, you would have done it already. There's nothing wrong with requiring stimulation, keeping your world interesting, but you've got to be conscious about how you're taking in that stimuli, where it's coming from, and is it serving you? Because like I said, we are just sponges for everything. So make sure that you have a good filter on what you're allowing in your brain, especially in this world that is set up to keep you engaged and enraged. But yeah, that's just where I'm going to leave the video today. Hopefully I can keep this going more consistently. I know I'm terrible at YouTube. I've got too much going on, but I really enjoyed this long form content over the short form stuff. That's probably why I've been talking crap about it as well. So I want to do this more often. I will be bouncing backwards and forwards between ADHD stuff and strength training stuff, because that seems to be the weird niche that I fit in. But hope you guys are all having a good day, and I will catch you next time.